Societal crickets, continuous societal crickets. Remember, societal crickets extends to even those that think they're doing something, but it's actually not the thing that ought to be done. And this becomes a real critical condition. I can't explain to you how serious that problem really is. As long as we are essentially crickets to the problem, thinking that we have nothing else better to do than maybe even just complain about it, fret over it, worry onto it, even believe we have a knowledge about it, and do nothing more with that, whatever is planned for us is coming on us. And it's so well organized, it may come on to us anyway. And what we're dealing with then is, we've talked a long time ago, I don't bring this up too much, but we hear there's this remnant that continues. This body of knowledge that's in us that continues past the oppression. And so we have the opportunity to stop it or be crickets. We have the opportunity to make it go where we want it to go or go the way someone else has planned it. And just astonishingly, just think about the scope of this, to be able to literally control the world. It's pretty fascinating. And then you have to understand the reality. That means someone didn't care about you, didn't care about your sons and daughters or anything like that. They will use you however they choose. And a lot of that I can see is stopped by your lack of consent. Withdrawing, rethinking your condition, and making a decision are two problems. You want to live your life, and then someone wants to take that life that you want to live. That under, as I perceive international law, our interaction between us, each one of us and other nations of us, the other us's, requires we step up when there's a problem that's wanting to take us down. So we have to come to a mind. Don't buy, don't comply, ask why. I just wanted to bring that up real quickly. That was a marathon yesterday. For the first time in a long time, I was able to listen at least. Was really more interested in finding about Detlev in Germany, and waited through, listened as I could in and out on a replay. I had to wait till the replay because he starts their marathon broadcast from Germany early in the morning from where I'm at. So I wanted to hear about his arrest. And so what I heard when he finally got to the English or the American version, I don't know why we didn't keep our own language, folks. Why did we continue the Queen's English if we were separated from the Queen? That he was explaining, finally got to the English portion, and so I could understand it, about what happened to him when he got picked up in Germany. And they were laying in wait for him and picked him up. And it turns out, I was wondering what the problem was. Apparently there was no problem lawfully. They had no actual charges for him. He just happens to be an outspoken voice. I guess they want to harass and interfere with and intimidate. And apparently he's not intimidated. And so he's going to be taking them to task as best I'm sure he can. And so this is a worldwide oppression that is, none of us are free. As I said, they brought the United States, America down in order, relative to everyone else that was oppressed, to make us look just a little bit better. And so we didn't realize that that we were actually plummeting. We went over into the stinking abyss quite a long time ago. That we're actually now sinking so far down that we're actually looking, other places in the world are looking more free than us. That United We Strike, don't buy, don't comply, ask why. Their marathon went on yesterday. That date is actually coming in the 15th. That I ask you, just take that day. Just sit back, think about that ring in your nose, whatever rings there are. Think about what you think you know that might not be. Think about what you think you don't know that you don't know about that might be. Consider that one. And rethink what's going on in here. And then, as I ask you to do now, just find something that's wrong around you. It could be in your life. It could be just outside the border of outside of your door. It might be just down the street. It might be into City Hall. It might be in the state. It might be federal. If you think you have a way there, and that's possible. Well, there's lots of people I don't know that know each other that focused directly can be one less cricket. One less, folks. We get the Gardasil crickets. One less. Someone who agrees and stops remaining silent on that disagreement, because your disagreement without action means nothing, absolutely nothing. So I was here really glad to hear Detlev. He's going to take him to task, and I hope he can. He's been a tip of the spear over in Germany, exposing lots and lots of things. He'll talk about. He kind of goes through. He'll have interviews. He's a journalist, a video journalist that goes around and finds and talks to people about lots of information. He was talking about quite a bit of things on his broadcast, the things I can pick up through translation on printed translation in German. He talks about a lot of issues that may be in your mind, and lots of people talk about lots of things that are important to some extent, like chemtrails and HARP and all these things, like, maybe fantastical things. He had somebody on that he was talking about that has a chip. I've heard about these before. I can't remember now the name of it. AV chip or something that's supposed to take the electromagnetic waves and convert them into something that's a lot better, re-radiates a much better frequency around us. And so that's these are really interesting things. I wish I had a whole lot more time to go after those, but that's not my place in the world. That's not where I've taken up, is to visit all those things I used to be interested in and actually experiment about and think about and design things and try to work toward the better life I was thinking was available to us. Because I was told we could do anything we wanted, and in the creative side, and that kind of went along with the idea that we weren't criminals, and so we really had a bright future. Well, that was just we were told that, and that wasn't really ever intended for us, apparently. Yet we can mean it for ourselves. And so this is why I keep saying, if you see something you don't like, you're going to have to write it, because no one else is going to, and that wrong maintains itself in the world. And really, that's a crime on all of the people everywhere, to maintain these examples that I just tell you is, we have to destroy concentrated evil where we find it. And even Detlev kind of said, I had to chuckle a little bit. He's a destroyer of evil. So we come onto these things, and we end up restating them in very similar ways. It's really, you see the enemy finally, whatever enemy you see is always the same. It's always an oppression, and it's up to us to throw it off. But getting back to what things that Detlev would talk about, as I said, talk about HARP and all these kinds of things. He's also, I think he gets into UFO type stuff. And sure enough, this last week, so hearkening back from Detlev and what he'll cover in Germany in German language, and what he brings to bear on Marathon, which I've not been a part of that. I haven't been invited for quite a while, and I don't push in. So they've gone a different trail apparently than what they think I want to do. But Detlev brings a lot of things up over there for the German people in the German language. Which again, this is a global problem. Detlev's problem is our problem. Arrested for no charges, and then the government feels that it can continue, and the system is set up as it is to allow for the plunder against anybody who comes against them. That I've been telling you, that's what for me, that's what I've learned to attack. I've learned ways and strategies and tactics, and try to bring, in a general sense, our experience, my experience is, and what our experience, when I say our, those that work with me, doing things, actually addressing these issues. And I can just tell you, behind the scenes, it's just a fascination to watch all their cards just fold up and go away and blow away. And then you find the persistent ones, the actual gang members, organized criminals that you really have to start focusing on. And I'll just say, I think, again, we've just done something here that struck the heart of the beast, and it's going to get wild here in a bit. So, and this is regarding our public domain, the agencies. We just executed a thing that really caught their attention, and so it's on. And I'm just telling you, folks, that you have to engage. The more we engage from different places, this government is centralized. It can't keep up with us. I'm just telling you that. You come in on it just happened to come in on what we're coming in, you'll just be another foe they have to deal with. And if you're on the point of the law and you're on the point of the right, they're going to have a terrible time with it. And the more laws I looked up this week, yesterday, about what a government official can do to cause themselves to be a felon, I don't understand why we have crickets, folks. I'm telling you, this is a target-rich environment, and there's just when you understand the relationship of a government agent with a fiduciary obligation, and that there's laws out there that show that even when they're in a capacity as a so-called law enforcement in enforcing laws, that their authority only reaches so far, and as soon as they step one toenail past, they become an impersonator to that office. That's a felony. When you realize that all these things, as I tell you, a color of authority that comes to take away your rights, remedies, and property under a color of authority, that's a theft by extortion when it's done by authority. That's a felony right now. We don't have to worry and wait. We don't have to wait around. That we haven't, as people, stepped up and asserted this law that I keep telling you needs to be done. But getting back to debt levies, there's lots of things to cover in the world, lots of really fascinating things I wish I could get into. But one thing was the UFO that I think kind of alludes to. I don't really know too much, but the story came up in San Diego, NBC 7 UFO video, strange multicolored lights over San Diego captured on video. And I'm always interested in these things, and yes, I have seen unidentified flying objects in my life. A few I had to laugh because I could identify them later, but it also gave me the idea that our perception, I keep telling you, like scientists, we're all guessing. Our perception is so limited, and our perception is so tainted by a prejudice in our own minds and what we think we understand and all we don't know. It's really a fascination. So I'm interested in unidentified flying objects. Yeah, I want to see that there's other things out there. Why not? Make it more the merrier, right? But this thing really captured a lot of attention. NBC 7 news crew caught it. It was an image of a landscape and a lights in the sky, and I won't go through too much more. But then the focus on our analysis. Now, I don't know what real special knowledge I have about observation, but I do have a photography background and a video background. I have a little bit of experimentation and science behind me. I do want to give over to the more fantastical. It's more fun. But at the point of taking a lot of time to analyze things, I've learned that you really have to figure out what is viable to be analyzing and what isn't, and make quick decisions so you can move on, at least in these, from the times I feel are very perilous to us, move on to the better answer. That this got quite a bit of coverage, a UFO in San Diego, and I happened to pick this up on another, someone who does this kind of thing, and on a video to actually see it. They did a presentation. Well, I was a little disappointed in their analysis. There was quite a few people on a Google participation, and there wasn't many. There was a debunking trying to be going on. They were talking about reflections and lights and this and that from inside the room, and trying to go out with, this is a real UFO. And so they came to the conclusion at the end that this certainly was a UFO. It was an unidentified flying object, I assume, by the term UFO. What I started to look at, and I wanted to people, the only reason why I'm bringing this up is our powers of observation. That we really have, and this is just something visual, but you have to start looking at how to look through problems. And you have to, I told you, don't ever really make any certainties unless you're the witness right there, knowing exactly the condition, and then even challenge that. I've been in first-hand witnesses of UFOs, and I've been, to this day, there's some things that happened are still unidentified to me, and some other ones that right in my face materialized as what it looked like something special, and it was actually something special, but it wasn't something extra special. It was just something I hadn't really perceived before, noticed how to perceive before, that right before my eyes developed. In one respect, I had never seen a Goodyear blimp sitting around 400, 500 feet in the air while I was sitting on top of a highway going down the highway, and I was seeing these flashing lights, and I'd never seen a Goodyear blimp before that day with flashing lights, and I'm looking at this thing that's looking like a spaceship, and it's only a few hundred feet above the ground, and it's off in the middle of a valley. And I'm thinking, wow, this is fantastic. Look at this. I pull over, and it's some retarded coming at me. I mean, and my mind is trying to figure out what I'm looking at, and I've never seen this thing before. Well, it finally came over the top of me, and I realized it was a blimp with a brand new light system on it. They can make that thing look like about anything. So from that day, I was able to really pay attention. And I get excited. I want to see the fantastical thing, but but always have that, but always put myself in categories of possibility. And I guess this is the key that I want you to understand. No matter what we're looking at in the world, put it in categories of responsibility until you can prove it. And even then, that may not be a proof, as we find science is just the study of the things we think we know until they're disproved later. We just kind of go with it. So this was an interesting view, but right off the bat I noticed, and despite the analysis that was done on the video I was watching, and I was disappointed at their lack of spectrum of possibilities, my mind was saying, well, this is, immediately I looked at it and I said, no, this is interesting, but it reflects a terrestrial, it reflects actually not a UFO, but a terrestrial vision, a terrestrial view. The structure that I'm looking at, yes, it could look like a UFO, but it's actually got the terrestrial view that's replicated in the fore-view. When you see the picture in front of you, if you haven't gotten there, even the lights were the same tone, colors, and there was one light that was a tower light we could see was red and flashing, and it had a periodicity to it that was constant. So I'm looking now, and I'm trying to figure out, despite what I'm hearing on the analysis and all the interjection that was going on about this thing, I'm saying, well, my mind says this is too structurally organized and reflects the foreground. But the problem with the foreground was that this light was 180 degrees. The red light that was flashing was 180 degrees out of phase. And even though my mind was saying, okay, we don't know about aberrations between glass panes and boundary layers, we don't know how that interaction goes to the lens of the camera, we don't know the angle, we don't know the placement, we don't know the atmosphere, and we don't know a whole lot about this, that even though it does look cool, this is replicating something on the ground. And so I could not make the lights in the foreground line up, but I said these lights are terrestrial. These lights come from somewhere, and so then my mind started going, what's the possibility of a mirage? What if there's a heat island right above the air, in the air, that would actually reflect light from a far distance away and look exactly like another terrestrial place with the same towers and the same things? And so that was one of my possibilities. And I was actually favoring that because I thought that would be a very cool thing to see if that's what we were actually looking at. That though that was the case, the picture does not shimmer like a mirage that is reflected off of a heat layer. And the heat layer wouldn't necessarily be that high either, would it? So then I'm still back to what are we dealing with here? I'm going through this because I want us to understand our powers of perception, that you do this really quickly and you can move on to the points that are important. Well, I came to the conclusion, to get to the end of the point here, that we are looking at a terrestrial structure. In fact, what we are looking at, to me, we could not tell what we were looking at that wasn't a terrain behind that looked to me, because of the bright blue light that shows up. It had a periodicity as well that reminded me very much of flying and the light towers. And I said, this is a tower installation. There's nothing showing us here that we would necessarily know wasn't a mountain that actually has a different installation very similar to the one on the ground in front of the foreground. That I concluded we're not looking at a unidentified flying object. We're more likely, and I don't have a proof of this at the time, it's conjecture, we're looking at an unidentified fixed object, and it very well could be sitting on the top of the mountain. Why? Because the two light sources, one was 180 degrees out of phase of the one down in the foreground, and the other one was too clear. It was too bright, something you'd actually see while you're flying, and why those lights are so clear and bright, and you're supposed to be able to identify those. Had I been a pilot, I would have actually been looking at a chart to find out if I wasn't coming too close to a mountain. And sure enough, there we have the video connection. If you looked very quickly, your intuition should have told you there was something more terrestrial to this. At least it did to me. Even though I was asking myself all these different things, well, what could it be? I fixed on the possibility it was a mirage. It was a reflection off the glass from an outside boundary condition refracted into the lens, or it was actually more important in the view, it was an installation on a mountaintop. And I got this idea because you don't see the foreground, you just see the half of the four trees and lights on the ground, which are approximately 20, 30 feet, 40 feet above the ground. So we're not seeing the ground. And so we're looking up. And so it ends up being, folks, as the UFO in San Diego, they're the same people that were doing the analysis. I'll have a link for it. Go to the end of the video, and you'll see exactly what this thing is. and to spoil it for you. It ends up being a mountain that is sitting right off that you can't see because of the atmosphere. That sits right there and not easy enough to see the mountain and not distinct enough to see it all. That is supporting this antenna and transmission facility on the top of a mountain. And so, and also, you look at this, and the way it's structured is too flat. There was no perspective at all to this thing. So that indicated a more formal thing. Anyway, that's the powers of observation. But we have to go through these things in everything we do, and we can't be persuaded even by what we hear or by what we read anymore. And so we are going to be our own protection. And it's not that this was going to hurt us, but we didn't need to spend a whole lot of time, and maybe I didn't need to spend the time here to explain it, except that I want you to understand we can be persuaded away from our better judgment, and our perceptions are weak, our tools are weak, our knowledges are weak. We have to put those into categories of, we have to be honest with our abilities to perceive. I don't have a problem with saying that it was a UFO, although I had a different perception. I think it was not an unidentified flying object, it was an unidentified fixed object, which I wouldn't understand. I didn't know there was a mountain there, but it made more sense. And that's what ends up being. Not that I even have a decision until someone came later with a camera view and shows exactly that it is that. See, so we still had, when we came away from that, we would all have a conjecture that when you see this stuff and people are telling you this, and this is a simple one. I'm worried more about for us on the things that are more subtle, like our interactions with each other, the so-called facts that we find someplace, the things that we retell, and the powers of observation that we have to have in order to see through it. Not that someone's trying to lie to you necessarily, but we really are that dumb that we don't know what we don't know, and we haven't been honest about that. That I keep telling you over and over, put everything you know in categories of possibility or probability. That I think, for me, that served me much, much better. And moving on to more of these fantastical things that may or may not be true that we can prove or don't. For those of you that are following the reptilian queen and who she may be supported and helped by, I found an interesting article from a different language. You'll have to get a translator for it. I didn't have the time to do it, but here's pictures, folks. You can see it for yourself, pictures of the queen coming out of the hospital, and she's being cared for by the nurses that are wearing pentagrams on their belt. And the square of the Freemason. So all you conspiracy theorists, as one category of possibility that we're a reptilian queen that is cared for by the Freemasons. Boy, that was a load of information there for you as we move through a little bit of obscure information that I'm not necessarily interested in. I could care less, folks, actually, but some of you all are loving to be entertained that way. And maybe, I guess somebody could put the ideas together that makes it all important to us. But I've been trying to tell you, I don't care what you call them. I don't care who they are. If they're violating what we perceive to be a social order of things in that keeping the peace and stealing property or oppressing people, I don't care what their name is. I don't care what their beliefs are. It's wrong. That's where my simple bottom line is. That's the wrong that I see out there, and I could care less if this queen's a reptilian order or not. I could really care less. But people fall into this stuff, and I want, I'm not closed to someone that can actually pull this thing together with proof, not conjecture, on whether or not this is another style of UFO that isn't. Does it matter to you, really, in your life, that the queen's reptilian? The queen is supported by the Freemasons, that she's cared for by nurses that are underneath this guard. Look back in history, folks. This stuff goes on and on. If you don't understand what heraldry is, you missed the point. As I've told you before, you missed the point. You've been in a perpetual world of war where heraldry stands at all, that they continually use today. What do you think a flag at all is? Everyone wants to, there's a gold fringe on the flag. What do you think a flag at all means? And I get the other people, Admiralty, you got to be careful about the Admiralty, this and that. And Folks, admiralty is recognized in the Constitution. It's a fact of the world. The oceans are, what, 3/4, they tell us? For all you flat earthers, that's a lot less, but it doesn't matter, right? 3/4 of the world is admiralty. You better bet that's the international commerce that the government was set up to protect, looking out, that we better have in our Constitution that it has purview over, and in fact you see it. That it's not admiralty law that's the problem. It's what they've been doing with it. It's how it's been utilized in the rules. Everyone talks about that, doesn't understand a darn thing about what they're talking about, and all they would have to do is go look at the rules changes between 1920 and 1948 or so, especially in 1938, and you'll see that stuff is all talked about, and they transform and compounded and molded and compressed all these things together so they get a better handle on you. And for all that we talk about people, you have to avoid admiralty and all the UCC is everything and is the bee's knees. It's not, folks. It's not. As I tell you, you get into property and you get into relationships and you get ahead of all that. There's not a status that can be put on you that you kept your mouth shut on what you thought you had for a status and the proofs of it. If you just shut those down and don't bring them into the story and you stay on the relationship and the obligations of all these type of governments, you're going to be a whole lot better position than trying to think you know about all that you think is being happened. Bottom line is, there's a big corruption going on, and we let it happen. There's the crickets, and my task at what I've taken on is to learn how to stop it and do the things it takes to do that. Don't worry that you're dealing with a reptilian. To me, I don't care that whether they're reptilian or a mobster, a Freemason, I don't care what, a Jew, I don't care what you call anybody. We're dealing with men and women in places of decision, and they're either violating you or they're not. That's what I care about. And so we have to, when we find that oppressor, when we find the crime, we're supposed to, it's our duty and obligation to ourselves and those around us to arrest that as best we know how. And I've been telling you behind the woodshed, there's ways to go about doing that. And anymore, given that we are in an administrative world, there's ways to deal with that. And there's a couple of ways right up front. Why would I get involved with a bunch of nonsense when it's not applicable to begin with? Why would I care about all the information of don't do this and you got to go do that and make this affidavit and all this other things if none of it was applicable to begin with? Why are you involving yourself with it? Why don't you just call out the limit of the jurisdiction and say you're not in there? Why don't you call out you're just a mobster, you don't have the right to be a mobster, and you're a felon? What's wrong with just saying that? That way you don't have to answer anything, do you? If the Queen wants to become, it's from a reptilian being cared for by the Freemasons, so be it. Don't mess with me. Interestingly, something came onto OWT, worldtruth.org, social network. Might want to go in there and look around. Join up and maybe even get a premium package and help keep the servers for us going, because this World Truth is providing the servers for me, for my voice, to go out. And I don't really understand it all. It's got too much going on. I'm not I guess I don't have enough HDHDA, whatever that is, to keep up with so much that goes on in there. It's just beyond me. I've got a whole lot of other things I'm focusing on. But a lot of cool people that are involved, that they have things in there that do it, that someone can place something on a wall. I don't even know how to do this, but someone puts stuff on my wall, what they call it. I don't even know what that is, but it's a page I get to go to and look, and or someone makes a comment about me, and tells me, and I get a message, very cool, and I can go see what's happening. Well, there was a little picture, and it says, it was interesting, no doubt, it's an interesting thought. The question is, are we free? And then inside the picture was a define we and define free. I assume free. It was pointing to the R. And so, are we free? And there was lots of dialogue about are we free in that picture. And I made a comment to that. I said, if you have to ask that question, the definitions of we or free are irrelevant. If you have to ask that question of are we free, It doesn't matter what the words mean. It does. You're not really understanding the problem. Number one, you're really not free anyway. There's things in the world naturally that we're not free from. We're not free from dying, that's for sure. The terminal event of life, that's the first natural cause. The others are possibly man-made. But there is oppressors and there's trespassers, and those are told to us in international law. We see it in the world in the law of war. We see that other people out there want your stuff. So we're not free from that either. But more to the point about the context of, is there governments that you're involved with? Are you free from those? That's your problem. And if you have to ask that question, then you're not being the sovereign you needed to be to put those in control. Whether individually or in collusion with all the other people that aren't free from fighting for their freedom. But if you're asking a question, then you're not taking action. You haven't identified an enemy. You're still wondering whether you are or not, and you don't realize by asking the question you have been. But in a way that you're a victim to it and allowing the accessory to the crime against you. So we have a lot of perception problems that it takes a while to work through a lot. I can't say I'm free of any of it. But I know that, as I said, when I came along the protocols of the elders of Zion, and I realized, well, if I didn't get a manual when I was brought into this place, the terminal event that birth is, boy, that sure kind of straightened me up about, there's a whole list of things right there that I didn't know that I had weaknesses to, that I started plugging those holes, and it started getting a lot cleaner for me. A lot cleaner for me. I started to know where to look for stuff, too. On top of taking notes of when you read international law, and you see what's happening outside, and then you see it adopted inside your country, then you realize there's a takeover going on. That you track down through those those supposed laws. They put lots of names on them. You can track back through. You can see the mechanisms. You can see how they're doing it. You see the language, and you can find out that when you find out and you start seeing that stuff happening in your backyard, that was the notice that you needed to step up and stop it. And if you didn't know about that, then when you find out about the part that's there and you didn't know how to deal with it, then you step up and you learn, and you take the responsibility to learn for yourself what you're dealing with, then to stop it. And anymore with the internet, we have tons and tons of evidence now to help us. I mean, there's lots of out there. Again, always using your critical mind to make sure that people aren't telling you right or wrong stuff. I get very cautious when I help people because I don't know the application side. I can tell people to do what we've done, as we've done over and over again. What works for us over and over gets picked up by somebody and done wrong, and it doesn't work for them. That's not a cool thing. So knowledge is not important here. It's the application of your knowledge that's all powerful. And then that's as powerful as you get is what you can bring to bear at one time. And as I've shown you periodically, and we're not disclosing a lot of this in what we're doing. I tell you a little bit about it. There's some evidence available that what we're doing is actually going on, but we're not doing this for notoriety. And part of the problem is when you become notorious, you're more easily picked off. So this is all part of the scheme and the strategy and the tactic to counter this oppression that we find. And it's everywhere, but we can only get to so many that's why I'm asking you. We need help. We, the people, need help. We need everyone's help. That's why United We Strike is kind of cool. United We Strike. But as I point out, we don't strike as a commune. We don't strike as a community. We don't strike in the idea of one voice. No, we strike at where we are, independent, and we all strike at once. We whack the roots and kill the tree of oppression. And we're not free to not do that. That's the one point. But if you're only asking the question, are you free, you better get up to speed quick. No, you're not free. Never have been. But it's all in context. And now we have an oppression. And your knowledge about what you think you know isn't enough. I don't like all this. I'm just saying that's the fact. This is a fact. This is a fact that we have to apply, and we don't apply it this way, we don't get very far. When we start taking an honest, objective view, when we start working out what's real and not what we think we're telling ourselves, we get a whole lot farther. And a lot of this is coming around. It's kind of a neat double-edged sword. As I tell you, science doesn't exist. As I tell you, the objective basis doesn't exist. As I tell you, we were told to challenge authority. We didn't know what that was. I think I've got a bigger appreciation on actually how to do that now. As I tell you behind the woodshed, trying to learn principles how to do that more correctly. And then taking the responsibility. If you want to be a sovereign, you got to take the responsibility. No different than the king has a problem in his country where he's having an invasion of the people inside it coming against him. He has to stop that, otherwise he's not a sovereign. You want to call yourself sovereign? You better step up. It's not the title. We have to be careful on the information, but there's lots of people now that are getting sick and tired of being told wrong, and the silence on that wrong is deafening. It's the crickets itself that people are buying in, and people are not having it. And so now we're getting more of these reports. As I tell you, science is prostrate before the truth. If we didn't know it before, it's been laid bare in lots of ways. That we now see another point here coming out. Scientific peer reviews are a sacred cow ready to be slaughtered, says former editor of BMJ, that's the British Medical Journal. The peer review process, long considered the gold standard of quality scientific research, is a sacred cow that should be slaughtered. The former, I wonder what those steaks would taste like. The former editor of one of the country's leading medical journals said, Richard Smith, who edited the British Medical Journal for more than a decade, said that there was no evidence, folks. We're always in a court. Our life is a court. And you have to bring the evidence, and you have to bring it the right way. And you'd be really well to do to go look at the rules of evidence, whether it's civil or your state, your federal civil rules for rules of evidence, and start to get the idea of what it takes to actually put in application your process for learning how to learn, and what to accept, and what doesn't hold muster, and what might, and how to go about the process of looking at every piece of information. And you ask the very first question, is it relevant, pertinent, or material? And if it's not, you throw it out that fast. That's a motion to strike. That's how simple that is. You hear something coming into a court as a piece of evidence, oh, Your Honor, I object. That's not relevant to the matter at hand. It's not pertinent to the subject matter at hand. That's a motion to strike. And you listen for what the judge says. The judge says go yes or no. Go back and listen to Perry Mason. That's where I learned it, folks, I think. So we have someone coming out as an editor. He says that there was no evidence that peer review was a good method of detecting errors, and claimed that, quote, most of what is published in journals is just plain wrong or nonsense. Now, behind the woodshed, I sometimes wonder whether they listen behind the woodshed. That's not happening, but, it's kind of nice to be able to be ahead of the curve on a lot of this. I've told you that this was the case a long time ago, and we had the proof in the record. You don't need to listen to this guy about the Chinese industry over making scientific scientific papers that are submitted. We also got the report at a college, I think it was the college, that submitted a report that was known to be no good and got it accepted. Got 5 other peer review agencies to pick it up. Nonsense as peer reviewed science. That this is an evidence that even your criteria has not been proven to be valid. Is an important point here that you need to learn for yourself, that this gentleman here is telling us about the scientific method of peer review at all. It's never gone through the actual scrutiny to prove that it can do what they claim it does. As I say that, I'm destroyed in one level because now I have no reliance. I have a shaky ground. I have no foundation. And on the other level, I'm giving you all the power in the world so I can make up this much. I can do this good all by myself. But see, when you tell yourself, when you get involved and you talk to yourself, woe are you to lie to yourself, first of all. Woe to you that you bring your ego first. Absent all that problem, and not denouncing and identifying your own prejudices. Absent that, I suspect, in earnest, you will not lie to yourself, that you will make a better review of your life and a better review of the battlefield that you chose and how to address it than anybody else can around you. It's not that no one has anything for you. It's that for you have to choose what's correct, and you have to listen to the standards. I'm always listening. Not just because there's a complaint, oh, I've been intimidated. No, tell me how you got intimidated. What were the factors that made you feel intimidated? That's how you approach this as an evidentiary proceeding for you to do the better and righter thing. And when you do that and you refine yourself that way, there's not many people that are doing that. Now you make yourself the 1% that cannot be assailed and prevailed against. And that's maybe the 1 to maybe 5% we hear are the ones that are actually doing what has to happen. So now, again, just moving on, the peer review itself, the standard of peer review has never been tested. And yet look at everything that's gone on that he calls nonsense that goes on for fact. And let me take you back last week. I talked about, I didn't touch on this, and I was a little remiss to do so because it's fascinating. Some of the way they do this is fascinating. And I go a little bit too fast sometimes for my own good. And to tell you the truth, a lot in my mind, and I pick this stuff together and I put it together. And by the time the end of the week comes, some of the some important deals and some of the minor details are a little bit lost on me by the time I come and start just talking, try to bring this stuff out. And I start thinking about that. Maybe I should go a little bit slower, but that would take a lot more time for me to formulate the broadcast. I'd have to really lay out, more of a structured form. Would probably be better, but I just don't have the time and sometimes the energy to do this better. So I'm going to revisit something based on this issue here. We find out somebody telling us that, at least in the medical journals, there's published journals that come in that are just plain rubbish. They're just factually rubbish. That I want to go back and I talked to you about this heat blob, and I wanted to point out something I forgot, but here's the same thing that we listened to. Remember, this heat blob problem was out there. They don't know, and I identified it for you for being, I said, my view was that there was a sea vent. There's lots of volcanic vents in the deep sea that issue up tons and tons of heat and tons of minerals and around which life that cannot exist outside of those environments, which are highly mineralized and low oxygen environments, that life is around this, that we don't need to have a carbon dioxide oxygen-based lifestyle only on the earth. There's all kinds of things out there that we were talking about the upwelling, and then we were talking from there about the heating and how they were figuring out this heating on the disclosure that the IPCC climate model was oversimplified. And I made a big deal about that oversimplification because that's what I've been telling you. They don't have enough complexity, enough understanding to make the complexity, to make the models. And then on this study, now remember, we just said that a lot of studies are no good. On this study, I pointed out that they attempt to tell us in their title that climate model complexity influences sea ice. And I asked, how does a climate model influence sea ice? This is arrogance here. But what was more important was, again, the standard by which you're going to receive and accept and hold information and give it a value. They went on in this discussion, this study, how climate model complexity influences sea ice stability, and together with the fact that there's nonsense published, and these things go before supposed peer review and not get caught, one thing I wanted to show you was how, even though the military saw that the IPCC models were no good, literally, which these people softened as being oversimplified, that these people, I told you, be careful how they do this. They're all in conjecture mode, even the military of the United States, but they saw a problem across the governments and the international sphere. These were not matching up. IPCC has been proven to be a failed, it's not even a hypothesis, it's just a failed imposition. It's a failed crime. But these people did another one, and I forgot to bring it out last week. Now, I'll show you about how these studies can be wrong or how you can buy into something. And I told you be careful. They're just trying to bridge a problem. They're not solving the underlying problem, which is that man has no clue. And they're going to try and give you some idea that they have a clue. And I'm going to show you how this study relies on something that shows you that it was baseless, has no foundation, that if this study was put into the journals and peer review looked at it, and they normally do this and say, okay, this is good, which if they were from the IPCC might agree, even though it points out the IPCC. Why? Because they have to somehow patch this monster gaping hole in the Titanic, the climate model Titanic here that's going down against the iceberg they say doesn't exist. That they used something in this study that was when I was reading, and all of a sudden it pops up and it says this: we find, in law, finding is very important. We find it's the answer to all the evidence, and all the evidence is they deemed by the rules of evidence to be proper. In other words, I'm talking to you, making decisions in your life. You have to find all this evidence was properly taken, and proper evidence and material and pertinent and relevant, right up front. That's how you go. That's how I kind of think about stuff. And it's not the only. You go to the rules of evidence. There's quite a list. There's about 10 things you really should pay attention to. And if you put through your filter, you make that part of your filter, you'll go a lot quicker and a lot of seeing. So this is how what I apply here as I'm reading some of these things in science. It's all the same thing. If you're looking at evidence, it's evidence, right? It has to be right. It has to be substantial evidence. It has to be irrefutable, beyond a shadow of doubt, proper. That we find, they say in this, that the stability of the ice cover vastly increases with the inclusion of spatial communication via meridional heat transport, or a second cycle in solar forcing, being most stable when both are included. Now, they just admitted that the models are no good. They admitted that even their model needed adjustment. But they relied on something here, this meridional heat transport. And so that is a evidence that they based their finding on. And so the view here is, what is this and why are we questioning it? It's the standard by which they made the finding. For you, it's the information you looked at. It was that someone brought you their standard of their finding and their research, and you have to qualify whether that's worth anything. So let's go. And what is this meridional heat transport? What's it mean? So I jump on the internet, the wonderful thing the internet is, and found one place. It's surprising how many places you'll look for this and not find an answer you can understand. And this is another trick. This is another thing of how it gets done to you. When you start finding this, you realize that there's a hocus pocus behind the matter. But I found this one site. It's actually a pretty neat site. It's an educational tamu.edu, and they talk about meridional heat transport. The oceanic heat budget. If you didn't understand, everything's reduced to a fiscal financial construct, as I keep telling you. This is what the IPCC is about. There's the UN. This is what Agenda 21, Sustainable Development. It's all about the social equity. It all reduces down to a functional bean counter outcome. Why you find the World Bank involved in all of this. Title 50. Why the military is all over you now. And no one wants to look at this. Didn't care about NDAA, but everyone's all over Jade Helm. The potential implementation of all this. The softening up war that they're doing to the population. As part of, you understand, that's a technique in war. You just soften the population up in what? In their necessities, in what they get to do, and what they don't get to do, in what their ideas are, in their finances, in their shelter, whatever. They just keep beating you up, in their psychology, most important. But let's go. Meridional heat transport. What the heck is this? Let me just read 2 paragraphs. See if something pops to your mind. Overall, heat. Now, this is what they based a finding on. Now, overall, Earth gains heat at the top of the tropical. Earth gains heat at the top of the tropical atmosphere, and it loses heat at the top of the polar atmosphere. Put your mind on the Earth, equator to poles. Let's just go that way. Okay. The atmospheric and oceanic circulation together must transport heat from low to high latitudes to balance the gains and losses. So that sounds pretty interesting. Meridional heat transport is really latitudes where you got a circulation pattern in the atmosphere and in the ocean. So start to put this model together. The north and south transport is called the meridional transport. How much heat is carried by the ocean and how much by the atmosphere is the question here. The sum of the meridional heat transport by the ocean and atmosphere together is calculated accurately from the divergence of the zonal average of the heat budget measured at the top of the atmosphere by satellites. To make the calculation, we assume steady transports over many years so that any long-term net heat gain or loss through the top of the atmosphere must be balanced by a meridional transport and not by heat storage in the ocean or atmosphere. So let's just go back. I won't go through this anymore because you go through this and you just see them explain how they make calculations. And then you find out there's 3 different ways. And so here's your facts, folks. They're based on calculations, as it says, of assumptions. Now, I want to ask you, if someone came to you as a judge in a court of law and said, I got this meridional heat transport fact, and I want you to find it true that my answer is being based on an assumption is the truth. As a judge, could you accept that actually into evidence? I think it's clear that you couldn't. So, here we are. A calculation based on assumptions is a big hole here for them to fudge. And they fudge by doing averages, and they fudge by doing different ways to calculate. And they assume it's correct. And this is what they use. This was the finding they used to match up the IPCC's complete fraud with their more functional fraud. And the fraud is that they say they know what they're doing and their models are accurate. And this study, using calculations on assumptions, not only do you have the calculation has to be right, you have to have the math around the calculation right. That's another model. It's an algorithm you have to work out. It's a logical sequence of factual connections and relationships. But it's based on an assumption that something else is going on, and they've never even studied it. To let you know, this is how, if you came to this point, as I told you, be careful about this study actually believing that it's combining certain things, that you now don't fall into the idea that there's this condition, even if it's so agreeing with our observation that man has not caused global warming, that itself was a fraud. And I wanted to point out how, in our information take-up, when we don't slow down and look at what these things are, in this case, meridional heat transport, we didn't get a basic idea what that is, and we accept the information, and you get 5 or 6 scientists accepting this information, you never go back to the source to find out, well, this is just an assumption. That's a calculation based on that assumption. And why did they have 3 calculated ways? They may not be able to do it in one way, which means they probably have a problem with their understanding. And we're back to the problem. This is scienceology. It's the study of what we think we know, and it's not actually reality. So here we have why the scientific, if I can get back over, why it's plausible now and believable, more believable than it's not, then that the peer review is a failed process. That there were journals, the science fact here has failed. When we get into things that are in nature that we don't have an actual clue about, that we are arrogant enough to believe that our models actually have an influence on sea ice. You take any of this and you buy into it. We say don't buy, don't comply, right? Don't buy into this. If you buy into this you are stuck to follow their logic and their proof of nonsense. Well, proof of an assumption is like coming into an outcome. I'll just make this stuff up. I'll give myself all the ways to do this. Here's another way that they do this, and I can't find it really quickly, is that they will go through these different ways to calculate and then average the readings. Now, averaging the readings is another way to hide the facts, because within the average, you'll find out they can hide, let's say, something as important as the speed of light changing. What? The speed of light changes? Well, yeah, we have evidence that that's a possibility. And why don't we see that? Well, because when they found that out, and then it puts an embarrassment on science. And Einstein, I don't know if Einstein, I don't remember who did it, who identified the speed of light's a constant. These constants are problematic. This is what I found out when I got into electronics. All my questions were, they were saying they were constants, and I'd look in the diagrams, I'd look at the theory, and I said, but this is nothing but it's a theory. It doesn't work out. You can't have an infinite something like here when you have limitations in the circuit. And the instructor would look at me and give me a big wink. You're not going to have to know that when you go where you're going to go to work. That's not the stuff you'll need to know. So don't worry about it. We're not going to waste time here explaining that explanation is faulty. That this is what science does. It averages things, and when in the averaging, they can hide anomalies that would disprove the constant, disprove a condition. And I'm not saying that those knowledges aren't there. It's just that you're not going to get there if you don't know to go look for it. Because some experts say, just because I says that this is the way it works, and you don't go looking very carefully. Now, I'm touching science a bit here. I was never trained as a scientist. I wanted to go there. I don't think I'm too stupid, though, not to look at a lot of this. I can look and see what a meridional heat transport theory is and find out it's an assumption, and it's calculated on 3 different ways. Now, are you, as a judge in your life, going to accept that as a fact and reality? Now, when your life is dependent on it, I'm thinking maybe you're going to make a little more important decision for yourself. And I'm suggesting to you these oppressions are life-altering and they're going to accelerate the terminal event life is. The oxymoron called life is a terminal event, remember. It's kind of fun in a way to think about it that way, but we're not left to be free to contemplate our navel over that. We're now oppressed and utilized for the creatures of activity that we are, and somebody can parasitically feed off of our life, and they do it by this kind of a method. Remember, all these scientists who do this are getting paid by supposed tax dollars by big systems and industries that are put into place. They use this as a facts and reality that they impose upon you eventually, that they use to guide these regulations that we're being beat down by, that I try to tell you how to deal with. If they don't have a jurisdiction over what you're doing and you figured it out, then they're going to be hard-pressed to create it. I can just tell you that. I wish I could talk about what we're doing, folks. I think the can got open on the government by what we're doing, and we're going to find out whether or not it's a whoop ass and whose that's going to be here soon. But this is how we're doing it. I'm not telling you, I'm applying to this same thing that we're doing in other places, but on the things that are hurting us and hurting people. And you can too. I guess that's my whole thing here. Don't make the excuse of not finding something out there. I can't believe I look out in the world and there's not something you just anywhere that something's got to trigger an offense in you to make it more right. Now, on the other hand, let's go back over. There's certain things that might work out in science, and we do our best away. It's like we're just fumbling along, but that can be good enough. It's like my instructor told me in electronics the theory. You don't need to know that. He was right. I didn't need to know about the anomaly. I'll tell you what, though, it sure put something in my mind. I was able to do experiments around it to test the limits of that anomaly and find fascinating things that they're not talking to us about. That's the wonder of it all. The anomalies are where all this wonder is, that really we don't need to know that our life kind of goes on, that he was right. I didn't need to know about all these anomalies. How do I get an an unlimited amount of current in an infinitely short amount of time? How does that work? And yet that's the theory. And you look inside that infinitesimally short time, if you can, and to the limit that you can, and you look at that supposed infinite amount of amplitude, and there's something going on inside that infinitely small time of space. It's pretty fascinating. But it won't matter when you get out to work. It really doesn't. It only matters to those of us that are looking for those things that are like the wonders of the universe. And that's not your job in this planet, on this prison planet, on this parasitic planet, until we throw that part off. That there are certain things, and I know, we talk about this GMO stuff, this genetically modified organism thing. Well, we talk about that in the context of me eating it, you eating it, us taking it in and being forced upon, injected into us, the byproducts of the stuff that we're eating, the lack of knowledge about it, the lack of disclosure. But I'm not totally, I come from my family, a grandfather. We did what you call hybridization. It's the natural genetic modification of plants to do better things that man needs. But it doesn't violate the cells. It's all done by natural processes. It takes a long time. I've explained a little bit about this. That's what my grandfather used to do. I picked up a little bit of it last decade or two. I haven't had any time to do that kind of stuff. I do a little bit as the years go on, but I don't do it real scientific. You can. It's kind of neat. Watch modification of plants as you find to hybridize the features and characteristics of different plants into one family of plant, where genetically modified organisms are trans species, which is a real problem. But that within the context of you not consuming it and it not necessarily not known to affect us, there are some interesting things that can happen. Now, whether or not there's been a study on this before, whether there's a lie behind it, I found this little study interesting. We heard about the mosquito problem, that they were going to make the GMO mosquitoes, and some of the stories we were hearing about Bill Gates being involved. And we were finding the problem with that is if it translates to one of the mosquitoes that bites you, there could be a transmission of DNA material that affects you no different than a hypodermic needle might. But this was an interesting story about genetically modification that, again, getting rid of our prejudice and looking at it. And I'm not saying I studied this. I'm saying just on the surface of this little report, it made a lot of sense that the study of the use of GM mosquitoes against dengue proves effective. And I didn't go through an analysis to see what their proof is, the standard of their proof, but just taking in the idea of what they did. And so that we don't divorce ourselves of possible good things and don't become the doctor nose of our own life to our detriment and cut our nose to spite our face. But what they did was that they were able to genetically modified male mosquitoes, which carried in them a gene modification that once they bred with a normal mosquito, an un-GM female, which is a natural female, it would cause the larva to not be able to develop to become a future mosquito that bites people. That on the very surface, I thought this was something I wanted to just quickly touch that looks like a fairly good application of gene modification. The ramifications of which I really can't tell. The power of nature to get around this, I really would be more focused on. That it made sense. The male doesn't bite. So you release a lot of males, they're not biting, they're just looking for females. And you overwhelm the population that when the babies hatch, the eggs hatch, they hatch into larvae that cannot pupate into viable mosquitoes that'll come and bite you. But that sounded like a pretty cool use of the technology. The only question, and I don't know why it was relevant, was whether or not the lessening of this dengue fever species would allow the more aggressive different species that doesn't come on. And I don't know why that would make a case. I mean, you're just going to be a pincushion to whatever number of mosquitoes is out there. If they don't interbreed, then there's not any problem. I don't know why one would just naturally explode. And if you're having that kind of problem, why don't you just go get more mosquito fish? that might be another salvation. But this was a very interesting study that they made. Male GM modification, they gene modified a male mosquito to breed with a natural female, and they found in the areas they measured, again, percentages may not tell us much, but in the areas they measured with 2 control areas, that 93% of the mosquito population was destroyed that carries dengue fever in the country that did the test. However, that country would not state that that was the answer, and preferred that they use all manner of defense against this problem, which is probably the more prudent thing, that they wouldn't say this was the way what happened. And so that was more prudent. I felt that maybe this study may have been a little short on its standards, but I didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater on genetic modified organisms here. In this case, it may be right. I don't know the underlying problems. Ultimately, my main problem would be the power of nature to overcome whatever deficiency has been placed into this by man. And you know that's a powerful force to be reckoned with. Very powerful force. You're finding that in all the nonsense that Monsanto pops up with when now the weeds are just tougher. The animals are just tougher. Antibiotics that come in, nature's just tougher. And so you have to again, nature's just tougher. So you're going to probably find out you're going to go back to nature to resolve your problem, and not go to the fallen ideas of man that can be, but we find that the peer review is not even sufficient. The sacred cow that must be slaughtered. And we need to find out these sacred cows in our life. We need to have the people from inside telling us that like they did. And as we move into things like that, whistleblowers from the inside, honest people doing an honest day's work, attempting to keep integrity in their field, their chosen field, that we find even within the intelligence area, NSA whistleblowers inside telling us these things. But this is all a big psyop in my mind, but we want to be cognizant of these as we move on. What do we have to deal with, and what don't we have to deal with? What's important and what isn't, and what are we going to do about it all? We are no longer afraid of the police state happening. It's here. Now, I don't need to hear that from an NSA whistleblower, and is that an NSA whistleblower to tell us that? But this is the stuff that they want to put out. This is what the Washington's blog author brings out. What I found important about this was a list of things that you can go read on all the areas of this, the areas that they understand this, that they're willing to tell us now, that if you haven't been taken serious, you really have to understand how serious it is. Where we are. When I told you the NDAA, it made battlefield America, no laws, no law of war, extrajudicial. We were in trouble, and where everybody went on that, I'm still flabbergasted. It's crickets on this. But the high-level NSA executive who created the agency's mass surveillance program for digital information. Now, I say digital information, let's go over to silent weapons and quiet wars. At the digital age here, big data. They didn't mention big data in that article. I'm telling you that's what it meant. Here we are. And that was written, back in 76 to explain to that was there for us. The 32-year NASA veteran, NSA, I always say NASA, and I don't know why. NSA veteran, widely, who was the senior technical director within the agency and managed thousands of NSA employees, said that America has already become a police state. So, no duh, like CIA duh, this is the problem. It's already happened, and they didn't have to fire a shot, and none of us are standing up with all of our weaponry to do so, which I say I don't necessarily invoke that, because I think that's the dead letter. That's the cause of the dead letter in us, that if we have to go there, we're now putting ourselves into a question instead of doing it more aware and more intelligently than they took us down by. That this is a police state. It's a military state, really. It's a policy state, administrative state. It's all there. If we understood the words, they've been telling us this since when, folks? Since probably before anyone listening to me. So if I have a listener that's sitting back in 30s, thank you very much for taking your time to listen to me. We need your voice. Tell us how it was, so remind us what happened just before the 30s, to show us that all of this that we see today is an oppression and an illusion. And we can find that out really quickly when you do, as I suggest, to challenge the authority, the actual scope and purpose of the authority. As I went through on the 3809s for the minor sugar pine mine condition and that root regulation. It does no scope of that rule does not encompass a certain type of area, a certain type of property. The purpose doesn't address a certain type of property. That's the beginning and the end right there. I don't care at any point whether or not there's a police state. I don't care whether or not. The only time I worry about that is if now you find out that they're organized thugs and it's not police at all. Then it is the occupier under the color of authority of your government, or the government such that it is, and that you're still crickets because you didn't go after that. And that's what I said. We opened up a can here this last week. That's what we're going on now. We're going right after that, and it's talk about sticking a stick in a bee's nest, a hornet's nest. But we got hopefully we've got all our super suits are all patched up from last time we did this, and we will be even more pervasive on how we root out this thing that sits under the color of authority that's utilizing and abusing that authority. You have to go to call that out. That's all I can suggest to you on how we work this. And so if there was any thought, we're in a military state. Everyone wants to call it police. It's military. Look around you. The NSA and the CIA don't involve themselves on mediocre disputes between landowners here. This is major stuff. Rules. That said, there's is a standard that you can bring up that has failed at one level because it takes so long to get in that they agree this is fine, and justice takes 10 years to get, and then it's only limited to what you brought as an argument. And this should tell you we had a big problem to begin with that the social engineers had. That NSA whistleblower says we are no longer afraid of the police state because it's here. How long have I been telling you this? I mean, this hasn't even been. It's been here since at least Lincoln's time. Okay, so it's not the police state. Maybe a policy state, but it's under martial military control. That is now ruled in a court case that was short-lived in a way. And to show you how nuts this so-called legal system is, rules the NSA bulk data collection was never authorized by Congress. Was a big story. It is a big story, but you want to analyze what you're looking at and what's going on. As Americans wait for Congress to decide next month whether to renew the Patriot Act and the vast NSA metadata surveillance program, it's been made possible. A panel of 3 appellate judges has made the decision of its own. The Patriot Act, it's not really Patriot, it should be Patriot. Those letters mean something, it's not a word. Again, that's a psyop all over us. They've now ruled with that Patriot Act, that act was now ruled as never written to authorize the sort of sweeping surveillance the NSA interpreted it to allow. So this was a big news. This is Section 215 that they're talking about. I think I was telling you about the banking rule where they made you all money launderers. I think it's Section 326. See, all that stuff sits, all those other ones sit there. You only get to see and challenge 215, and this appellate court now comes out putting it on the record that that act was never meant to do what it is of gross collection for no good reason of all this information. And the ACLU advanced that. Now you got to understand the ACLU is a problem organization. Besides all that, they're bar members. And you know about our lawsuit. These people are plunderers. These people are parasites, and they're social engineers, and they do it contrary to the Republican form of representative government. So whatever they're doing, it's going to work probably well for the system, for the engineering of the society. Notwithstanding that, in a landmark, see, this is the point. They're making decisions to allow it to get to the Supreme Court on that failed model of how you get things challenged, why it takes so darn long. Again, that alone, the appellate court system tells you that the ones that are in this system don't make law. Otherwise, the first one that made it would make the law. And it would be above reproach, the law they made, or not law they made. That's the problem. The law they affirmed was lawful. Understand this little subtle, simple distinction. In a landmark decision, the Federal Court of Appeals unanimously ruled today the NSA's phone records surveillance program is unlawful. And I'm just going to cut through these because I don't want to. You can read all this stuff yourself. If you didn't know about it, this is really a big deal. But you got to understand the underlying thing and watch this for what it is. Because right after that decision, there was big noise about it in lots of little areas. There was another decision. And it says that NSA, their decision was, mass collection of phone data is legal. That the ACLU that brought the lawsuit for this one, that case was dismissed. In a subsequent case to the first one, a legal battle over the scope of the United States government surveillance took a turn in favor of the National Security Administration on Friday when a court opinion declaring that bulk collection of telephone data does not violate the Constitution. I'm not going to go through and weigh all this. You need to go in and you need to read and see the stuff and how it works. You need to be thoughtful about what they're telling you here. But what they've done now is they've now established, and I can't believe this is a plan, over all this time now in the same week they get two decisions. If you don't see that as a plan, you're not looking close enough, folks. I mean, you're really not. Not only should this been challenged, the second the PATROT Act was enacted, it shouldn't have taken 10 years to come to the week that two cases are decided oppositely. Now, you tell me, what kind of law is that? What kind of judiciary do you have? What kind of mentality do you have in these judges that can find 180 degrees out of each other on law? Not admitting that the law of gravity is law or constant or actual. You can take it to the bank that if I throw your body off a cliff and someone else throws another body off a cliff, you're probably going to hit the bottom at the same time, notwithstanding any buttes and outcroppings that you might hit on the way down. That's a law. If I was a judge and I tossed you off and a friend of mine over there, that other judge and bar member, we all belong to the same group, and he found another body to throw off that cliff, our determination would be the same. That's a law. How do you live in a society that allows this divergent decision? Shows you live in an unreality. You're living in a fiction. And let's not get lost in the fictions called legal entities. That's what they're always have been known as. They're not big deal. They're tools. They're all tools of fictional tools for this legal plunder. And we are remaining crickets on that. So we have now a big problem. Why do they do that? Because there's been a rule now. You can't get to the Supreme Court at all. I mean, you got 10% of the cases go to the Supreme Court will get heard. And then it might be like the NDAA. The judges will walk away from it. That you have to have two different appellate districts with different decisions before they'll pick it up. And it's all a policy opinion. It's not law actually anymore. So this is the structure that we've allowed to this point by remaining silent. And I see all the old films and stuff and all the people, and I just see there's just a mass of humanity that just doesn't get it. Just doesn't care, hasn't cared. I don't see why we're any different. I don't know why I care. I don't know why you care. But we're not caring in the proper way. We need to get a little more involved if we expect this to go beyond all the old videos we see, the films we see. All of us will be walking in the streets next to the cable cars and the horse-drawn carriages, running like speeds and, fast everybody around because the speed's all off. That's what we're going to look like in the future when we do nothing more than what we've watched that our predecessors did in the face of this coming on us. The CIA will keep killing civilians with drone strikes because the rules for drone strikes aren't actually rules. If you didn't understand what the NDAA meant, this is more of its thing. They're going to take it right out. If it's not a rule, it's not addressable in the courts, so they say. This is how the attorneys are twisting and attorning this condition that we remain crickets on. They started off with the word. What have I told you out of NDAA? They went lawless, and they start out the word from here, right on the beginning of the article, is extrajudicial killing. There's no law. What place do you live in when it's supposed to be under law? It isn't under law. Can you see now how a judge can rule 180 degrees out of another? There's no law. It isn't law to begin with. And we're crickets on all this nonsense. Extrajudicial killing by pilotless airstrikes is just something our government does now. Weaponized drones are sent out to eliminate enemies of the United States. Folks, that's you. You're deemed an enemy combatant subject to a bureaucratic council. When they want to decide to take you out, they will. Extrajudicially, no law. And this is what's coming out to confirm to you as I bring it to your attention. Supposedly under the guidance of the Department of Justice, ha ha ha, and some no, that's not in there, I'm laughing. Department of Justice and some presidential policy directives, no law. But the rules aren't rules. They appear to be set in stone when the legal authority behind the drone strikes is questioned, but they're much more fluid when they, quote, need to be like, say, after the drone strike takes out more than its intended target. I won't go on and read it. I'm telling you how you develop this ongoing, moving battlefield and policy condition that if we haven't stopped, it's right here for us to stop, that the term extrajudicial, I don't know of anybody that's challenged that they could not bring something up where they can make they can determine whatever it is, and that it doesn't have to suffer the scrutiny of the law. That it does that is a breach of the restricted form of government, isn't it? And yet we get these discussions and these decisions by the ACLU that walks into arguments, wins one and loses one over the same section of law. If you have no foundation, that should tell you something. That they can make this up. Because they claim there's no rules. As I told you, it went extrajudicial. How can there be? What do we do about that? Do we continue to admit that the Patriot Act was lawful, and so we just argue 215, or do we attack the premise of the Patriot Act at all, or do we attack those people that are making those decisions? See, we haven't even looked at the limit of whether or not they can allow even overseeing these kinds of things. Where there is no review, because there is no rule, and administrative processes require rules and hearings and all this other stuff, where there is no rule, they tell you it's policy. That's just an opinion, a private discussion. Is that the kind of life you want to move into the future with? I found Electronic Frontier Foundation did a cursory analysis of the decision that allowed that it was illegal, not illegal, not unconstitutional, and then in reference to the one that they did win, supposedly win, they prevailed in one and lost in the other, and they're doing an analysis. I have you a link in the post-production broadcaster, and so you can get a sense of this. And my view on a lot of this is just how they keep our attention, and how the attorneys are part of the problem. Even though they claim, oh, this is a big win, this is not a win. This is just an ongoing slow burn of your life and the things in your life. And you're hearing that it has no basis in it at all. You're hearing that no two judges can look at the same thing and find law. Like if I was a judge and had a body I sacrificed to Pele, and another judge had a body he threw off and sacrificed into a volcano for Pele. Over there, these religious types that want to believe that Gaia is harmed over our existence and the natural cycle of things that brought us here, that each body thrown off would take the same amount of time to hit the bottom, that our judgment in law would be the same, to tell you the distinction between what's man-made and what's natural. That we're going to have to get a handle on this, because what's coming down in the news in the last couple of weeks is government right now has no restriction. The United States government says we can classify anything and judges can't stop us. Another important discussion going on. At a hearing today on a lawsuit seeking to make videotapes of force feedings of Guantanamo public, the Justice Department attorneys argued that the courts cannot order evidence used in trial to be unsealed if it has been classified by the government. Quote, "We don't think there is a First Amendment right to classified documents," close quote, stated the Justice Department lawyer Catherine Dorsey. And you got to understand who these people are that argues this stuff to you. Who are these people? I mean, what kind of a character are you? I don't even know if that's a rhetorical question or not. I mean, I think it's a self-evident answer of what kind of character you are. The judge of the D.C. Court of Appeals appeared skeptical. Chief Judge Merrick Garland characterized the government's position as tantamount to claiming the court, quote, "has absolutely no authority," close quote, to unseal evidence, even if it's clear the government's bid to keep it secret is based on irrationality or that it's hiding something. Dorsey says that is our position. And so the point here that it was an anomaly, the fact that they're before the court having to argue this shows that maybe it's not so, right? But yet they state it anyway. And you have to understand that this is an organization in the United States government, the Department of Justice, so-called, that states that they can say whatever they want to say, they can keep classified and silent on anything they want to do, and there's nothing anybody can do about it to tell you you live in an extrajudicial organizational plunder, and we are watching we're watching our demise. That we are at that extent almost oblivious to be able to deal with, that I keep telling you, as we say, don't buy, don't comply, ask why. As I say, withdraw, take the ring out of your nose, withdraw, rethink, re-engage locally to you. That you start getting the experience that you need to start eventually get into detail out how these plunders and these illusions and fictions and these literal lacks of real lawful authority are in fact that, and turn them away, destroy, throw off these occupiers. That they will say, well, this is whatever we want. This is, you only get, if we classify the things as sealed, you can't have them. We can tell the truth, we can lie, it doesn't matter. But that's your quality of your information has to be really a serious problem. That when this next report that came up was, it's sad in one regard, but it's the truth, and this is what we have to deal with. I haven't talked about this for a while in the last few weeks, lots of information to talk about, but I want to jump us back over in the Middle East real quick about what the government does with this power. You can't touch this. Do. It's drone time. And no one gets to see it. And the problem right now is no one seems to care. But the United States led airstrikes in Syria kill 52 civilians, including 7 children. United States led airstrikes are killing 52 civilians. And the people on the ground said, but there was no is here. Because that's what the United States was supposed to be attacking. In fact, what they attacked was a place to weaken the area for the is to attack them. And so you have this control of how they classify. I guess they can just classify everything, right? Once this happens, as critical to the United States knowledge. And it's just a bunch of insiders have taken control of the rudder of the ship of state. And they've now making law as they occupy now. They've taken over and substituted themselves for lawful authority, and now changing the law over time to make themselves the tyrants that we can see that they are, that they don't have they're just absolutely psychopaths. They got no sense about, they don't care about lying. They don't care about publicizing what they're doing about killing people, that they're killing people, that they're not killing the people they say they're killing, that they're claiming that they're taking money to go do this and not killing the people that they say they're killing, that I've identified behind a woodshed, and I'm not the only one, that is a tool like LCAA, was and is to continue all this, to show that they're after Syria's president. They want to get rid and destabilize that whole area. Damascus is a critical, historic, and psychological place. It's a future place. as Yemen is now under attack. We watch these things, folks. Historically, these are serious places that the West, Zio West, is attacking. That the United States says we can classify this stuff and we can lie and we can just do what we want, and you don't have a right to know better. But this news comes out and they deny it. They denied that they did it. That's representing you. While the United States supposedly attacks is killing really people that are not in the fight, who just want to live their life. I find it always amazing, the anomalies in the news that tell you it's all a big joke. Someone's laughing over a lot of this. At some point I kind of chuckle myself. That the United States has to go over and pretend its bombing is it's a threat against the world stateless terror, which it is itself, that it is almost helpless except for what it's doing to go bomb innocent people and allow them to be bombed by Israel and Gaza, that we can go and destroy whole groups of people and their livelihoods in favor of what the CIA wants in Afghanistan, which is poppies and opium, that we are going to kick the ass of everybody in the world. That this next story was a big laugher to me, although it's nothing to laugh at. That while we are out in the world able to kick everybody's ass because we're just big thugs and able to do so, that a report came by through another week ago or so, that protecting the sage grouse could hurt the military, a report says. Now, I want to understand how a little bird in a sage area is kicking the ass of the military, and we're supposed to expect that we're going to go and knock his out. Stop terror anywhere. How is a little bird going to harm the military, folks? And that makes sense. But protecting the sage grouse could hurt the military. And I've told you, folks, we have a record. We do coordination against this. That the sage grouse finding is based on actually reports that the scientists didn't even want to sign on to because they were fraud. That the military also does another dereliction of its duty to do due diligence to find out that the sage grouse threat, even if it could kick the ass of the American military, is a fraud. To show you that you really have to pay attention when you're told something really deeply. Then I want something to markonthebeast.yahoo.com. Folks, markonthebeast.yahoo.com. This is the weekend war report. Deep behind the woodshed and defended by the Doge of War. You can find that little icon on RLM and go and give over something to Grimner for all the server space he puts over for us. Now to his pocket. How in this world war is a bird kicking the ass of the United States military? And when you answer that, I need to know that. markonthebeast.yahoo.com. That doesn't show this entire condition to be laughable. That if it wasn't killing people under lies, we would be the Comedy Central is open. It's called the United States of America, folks. Comedy Central. We're going to have a new resurgence of comedies. How is the sage grouse doing that, folks? I'm just going to touch on it quickly. Even if the science said that they were endangered, nothing in the ESA or NEPA provides that it can interfere with man's environment. Notwithstanding the importance of national security. To show you that the government is playing and being played and is the player, and you sit there as crickets, is an astonishment still to me. I'm not talking to those of you that have engaged, rolled your sleeve up and engaged. I'm talking about those of you that maybe probably not listening to me anyway. That isn't the focus of your ire at this point. These stupid anomalies in the world. The real soft spots and the obvious soft spots and the obvious Achilles heels. It's astonishing to me. They're laughing at us. They throw this stuff out there. Oh, the U.S. military the whole United States got defeated because of the sage-grouse habitat. Completely insane. It's the United States is the comedy central. Except that the rising police aggression is telling an indicator of our societal decline. And so that's an obviousness. I just included this. We can go through and read. But the point is, it was an interesting story printed out on Chris Mentenson's Peak Prosperity. I think this came from Gary L. also, this one. The historically common marker of failing civilizations. You might want to look at this and read it and show how this military aggression it's rising, and that I'm telling you that's because we've allowed it. And we're all doing what we can, that we are doing. Those of us that aren't, we're allowing this. And so you are seeing the societal decline. Because what is that the foundation of? You're seeing crime going unaccountable. You're seeing crime under the color of a costume of authority that's unaccountable. And I entered this broadcast telling you, if you allow crime, and then we were told in a different way, you are required to stop sin wherever you find it. No different. You see a felony, you have to arrest it. And I think with Sweden, you don't do that, and someone sees you not doing that, and they do it, you'll be made as if you were committing the felony. Where is that in our society? Well, crickets, folks. I guess that's where it's at. But this is the responsibility that why we're seeing the decline, because we're not holding up our end of it. Why I ask you, just get involved. I don't know where you're going to find what's going to find important. But just find that thing and just start getting involved. One more thing I'll maybe touch on. I really can't touch more. This strategy and tactic, like the miners, they're all on a mountain. All the oath keepers are on a mountain in one spot. What we've just instituted will allow miners from everywhere to go in on one spot instead of being in one spot and being the target at that one spot. We make the government now fear for its security, because they are now outed to be the felon. And anywhere, from any place, at any time, someone can come out and take them where they need to go to get accountability. And you change that whole dynamic from you being the focus, the one that they get a whole bunch of people on, to you, the many, coming from anywhere to take out and stop and arrest the felony that you can find by objective facts. And more importantly, the way we do it, we get their admission and confession. That's real easy to do. Now, when I see the societal decline condition that we see reported and being talked about, it's notice to us that people see the same thing, and we are the responsible party because we were supposed to stop that, and we were supposed to do that for lots of reasons. I give you lists I keep telling to you over and over, and I don't need to repeat them, I don't think. This just should be one of those self-evident things. Your society declines because the society doesn't hold up any standards and principles. And it doesn't really take that many to do that. We know that. And what happens then is a societal decline. What do you expect? The police are given there's no accountability, and then come late. Only to the squeakiest wheel does the Department of Justice come to wave the flag of protection for you, so you think they're doing something good. But North Carolina officers are arrested in a major drug bust. Another story. More than a dozen law enforcement officers, including 11 in North Carolina, have been arrested in the government sting that included the FBI. The government announced Thursday. Now, what was interesting in this story, and I'm not going to find it because I don't have a highlighter on it, but it says that the FBI was real interested in this because it was, it just shows that there's no credibility. They can't have that. And so I took that as an we can't tolerate. I found it. We can't tolerate this type of behavior, especially from law enforcement. That was from the sheriff. Now, if that's the case, why did it happen? See, this is after the fact. The FBI wants to say the same thing. It's going to be interesting for us when we lay our lawsuit and we lay what we've just done on the FBI now to show the terrorists are the government itself, whether or not the FBI is going to feel, and the local sheriff and the sheriffs around are going to feel that this has to be stopped. The color of authority that cannot be trusted anymore. that's actually the criminal because the authority has been overtaken and overthrown. And people have lawfully acquired their positions and then mistreated them. Why is that so hard to identify and state? I don't know. And to tell you the truth, it's come this long before we've set up the record in order to do it. But it's everywhere once you look at it. Oh, DOJ's hot on it now. The federales are all over it now. Justice is coming. This is to give you to believe that there's something happening around you to protect you. Justice Department to launch federal investigation of Baltimore police. Folks, you think those are the only two places? North Carolina and Baltimore? You think that's the only two places? When the report you found before says the societal decline, please. It's everywhere. And all we see the DOJ stepping up is when they are going to get called on the carpet for naught. Only the most egregious. What I tell you, where did we get that definition? But out of the Libra Code. The police or the military. Because they show you they are. That's what that says. And underneath the Libra Code, the oxymoron called the law of war, it says it right in there. Unless the security and stability of the occupation are threatened, these people under a color of a uniform can do about anything and get away with it. And look around you. BarkOnTheBeach.yahoo.com if you can find instances of that just doesn't happen. Maybe I want to move there. I'll move the woodshed and the wood over there. It's lawlessness and amplified. Victims you become without apparent remedy. Things go south when the DEA illegally uses owner's truck without his knowledge for hauling marijuana. His driver gets approached to help the government. We're going to stop some drug cartels. He gets his truck from this guy who's the owner of the truck and a trucking job, goes down and gets some marijuana put in this truck, and he goes and delivers it where the cartel's going to be, and this guy in the truck is a truck driver. He gets shot to death as the cartel figures it out. DEA screws up again. Fast and Furious. They cause over $100,000 damage to this guy's truck. He tries to sue them, and he loses. They get to take your stuff, fill it full of marijuana, have someone shot in your car, and you get to clean it up at your expense. Now, I want to know a little bit more about this. There was a story, got 3 links for this, and I looked at this, and I've got a little different attitude about looking at the courts. I don't know. I challenge their authority at every turn, and our court case proved that the United States District Courts are no authority at all. I want to know, these attorney picked up this case. Who pays when the DA destroys your vehicle and kills your employee during a botched sting? Hint, not the DEA. Oh, the guy goes and takes an attorney. He goes into the court. He files. I find the paper. It's a link somewhere. It says on the title, in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Texas, Houston Division. Let me go back to the first 4 words. In the United States District. In the United States District. That doesn't say District Court of the United States, does it? No, it says United States District Court. Do you know? And the statutes tell you this, that United States District Courts are territorial courts. They have no authority where they are over the jurisdictions of what they take. Unless it's inside the structure of the government, like in bankruptcy and using the monetary system. They're Article 1, Article 4 courts. They're not district courts of the United States, which are Article 3. This attorney put it in the wrong court and got probably the right answer for an administrative case inside the DEA. And so we have attorneys that are not challenging these decisions. Let me now return it over to, real quick, to Bundy. That's Bundy's problem. He got into 2 decisions in favor of the government in a USDC court. We have proven in our court case those are not courts of competent jurisdiction. The judges from those are not competent, and you are not getting a competent judgment out of an Article 3 court through them. That one of our failures is not understanding this as well. So where's the accountability? Well, it's in the seated decision for what the law is. What did I tell you before? There's no law. You get these decisions 180 degrees out. They're opinions. They're not law. They're not determining your relative rights. And why did he go to United States District Court if his argument was actually a takings that the government did when they took his property without his permission? Why didn't he go to the Article I court that's called the Claims Court instead of the Article I court that's called the United States District Court? Or it's an administrative court for the territories of the federal government. I want you to look out in your state, the so-called states that you see. Where are the federal territories there, folks? I'll tell you they don't exist. The only territory would be any land ceded to the federal government, which these courts may have administrative function over. So we're doing it wrong as well. I'm not talking opinion here. I might have done it, talked to you opinion a year ago, with basis to say so. But now we have the proof in our own case, a quo warranto, where the judge could not show that the United States District Court, a USDC court, is a court of competent jurisdiction for Article III matters. And I can tell you this issue where he's got his damage to his truck, that's a takings by the government of his property. He should have went to the claims court, Article I claims court, which is a whole different court. And when you look at what their excuse was, to me, and again, there's a corruption there in the claims court. Remember, that's where the vaccine court is as well. That this will still be the government overseeing itself, but at least what they claimed was their right to do as the government are not a right to do when you get before the claims court. But when you're dealing with a judge who can be 180 degrees out of the truth in the law, hey, everything's fine, right? So we see this devolving problem, this falling into the stinking abyss is because we don't challenge the authorities up front. And that's what we did in our lawsuit, and that's what we just triggered here a couple days ago. We go right after the authority that is purported but does not exist. And you know what? It's interesting how many of those people that are just employees of the government think that they have a big puffy chest, they have all this authority until they learn what the law actually says, and they admit they don't know that, and that might change things. So we will see, folks. You can too. That's what I'm saying. You just get involved. Find something. Don't make the excuse there's something out there. Somebody's getting harmed somewhere that you can help out. Something just sticks in you that's just not right. You need to get right. Even like I tell you, just a traffic ticket. Just resist it, folks. Just start fighting it. Do your pre-pleas, remedies, and avoidance. Don't plea in. Challenge them at every turn. Hit them for the fraud that citation is, that say you're trafficking when all you're doing is going down and using the highways that were granted to us all to use. Learn to say no in the proper way. That's the bottom line. Another commentary here. In cop culture, the Bill of Rights doesn't amount to much. I won't read this. This is Mr. John Whitehead's stuff. Some of it's really, really good. Some of it I think he misses some of the point. Particularly from what my specialty would be on this land law and the authorities that we find in there. But what struck me here is the cop culture, the Bill of Rights doesn't amount to much. Let me call your attention back to the sheriff's deputy when confronting the miners at the Sugar Pine mine. The miner says, we're just trying to be we're law abiding and we follow the Constitution. And this deputy sheriff, having the obligation and duty to protect that miner, and by the oath of his office to honor the Constitution, this miner is saying that he was following. That officer says, I don't think much of your Constitution. That this title, a cop culture, the Bill of Rights doesn't amount to much. That, if he's saying it, and we have the direct experience of it, and this miner found it, it's universal. It's just not happening in Baltimore or North Carolina. It's universal, and every one of you has an ability to go after that point and go down and make a policy that says your officers will recognize the Constitution as their oath requires, and you might even put a penalty that says, and they'll be fined $15,000 if they ever don't honor it. So all this corruption sits there, all this taking advantage and expanding the scope of limited authorities that are out there. When you properly address the underlying authorities is why I tell you that the fact that they can tell whatever they want, they make up whatever they want, they can lie about it, they can classify it away from you, they can keep it from the courts, is why I keep pressing that you need, if you're going to get in the digital age, that you need to protect yourself as best you can. I ran ran across another link from The Intercept, which I'm highly questioned about, but nonetheless, the information comes from them. So where I wouldn't have it the time to go look, it came up through there. That they say encrypting your laptop like you mean it. They give you an explanation of the importance of encrypting your entire hard drive. And think very carefully on these things. If I didn't know where to go do it or you didn't think about it, again, the idea happened to me when I saw this article. It was after I had seen all those other articles where the government is stealing this information. The idea again where the couple, the family was rice cooker, backpack, and the son in Boston bombing hoax. Then she gets a knock on the door. They're making up that they want to make bombs. I mean, you need to protect your communications, encrypted through and then encrypted upon. And hopefully you don't have a chip a processor that's looking before all that you encrypt your entire laptop so that no matter what happens, it's harder for them to get at. So that they can't get in and see your stuff where they can. Get off of Skype, as I've been telling you. Go to Talks. Go to Jitsi. Find alternatives that are encrypted. Apparently and repeatedly, encryption works. While we see what's going on in the government, the positions that they take, you have to take that incursion seriously. And the more you push forward, the more an object you will be, like Detlev is finding out. In fact, like we just found out here this week, and I wish I could tell you more, but that's okay. We are tactically positioned in order to, when they hit us, they've just committed another crime. That they will try to hit you. They act like the gangbangers that they are. They're the organized syndicate thugs, and you can use that. They're beasts in the field, and you can use that to your advantage, but you're never going to be able to do that until you engage. When you do engage, you become a little bit of a target. You can set up shields somewhat in order to go after them, and you start putting the noose around their neck, and every time they move, it gets tighter. That if you start doing that enough and you start becoming someone and you take the responsibility, you stand up for yourself and others, you may have to consider this digital age is a trap that you're going to have to still function in and protect yourself. It's part of the battlefield. It's part of the Internet of Things, as we come on to a bunch of other stories. I'm probably going to run out of time on to get to. Maybe I should get to one of them, which is kind of funny. In a way, let me get to that now. I'll go ahead and move that up. There it is. Yep. Let me see if I can get this. The Internet of Things, as I said, that was this next article that pops up, but I had it at the end. I had some other reports I wanted to do, but encryption, folks. And I told you, be careful. They build into these chips these accesses. Well, it came out. The Next Thing company releases world's first $9 computer. $9 computer. It's the size. The computer itself is the size of a credit card. Phenomenal technology here. You can add a plug-in keyboard, a plug-in monitor, but the size of the computer with Wi-Fi no less is going to be $9. It's on I think a Kickstarter or something. They've got some, I'll just tell you, they've already got the big money behind it. They're just trying to get some public awareness. This is a propaganda. The New Thing company produces a $9 computer. Do you understand what that means? Let me push you back over to the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. That means that everybody will have a credit card size computer anywhere and everywhere in their house. Like you saw, the credit card size is no different than the driver's license having that big RFI antenna. Now you're going to be connected up to that Internet of Things. And isn't this an interesting coincidence that this is called the Next Thing company? That this is a brilliant move. The government is probably subsidizing this behind the scenes. They've already got all the money they need. They just need to get your buying in, and they're going to litter the world with these little $9, $10 computers, which I'll tell you, technologically wise, boy, wouldn't that be great? Wherever you got a little credit card, wherever you go, you got 10 of them around you. Every room in the house, in your car, outside in the garden. What do I want to plant? What phosphorus do I want to put down here? Right there. Just plug it on out. They're going to make this stuff so available. I love the technology. I love the idea. But this is such a trap that I don't know, folks. It's been very hard for a bunch of companies to make the $100 computer and get it into schools. This quantum jump, into a $9 computer, the whole system of which only costs $28, $29 with HDMI connections and screens and all that other stuff. I can't conceive of this. I couldn't get the plastic together for that cheap. That they can't make a $100 computer, the quantum jump to 9 to 28 or whatever it is total for the whole system. I'm telling you, be careful. And this system's going to have all kinds of, there's not going to be a back door. This is going to be a big sieve. Everything you do is going to be available. And they're going to be Wi-Fi connected. They'll have GPS. They'll have everything. And they're going to get it. Even people like myself who avoid those concentrated evals we call phones, this is going to be really hard to resist. They're going to get most of us, folks. I can just see it coming. So, wanted to just touch that in the Internet of Things. How do you encrypt this device? How do you encrypt this, folks? This is technology beyond. And this is the war, the silent war, and the silent weapons against us in the silent war. But we have to consider these things if we have a consideration that we will have a better future. I think it's there. And I think it's there very quickly. Only though when we get a minor mass of people to stop pushing their legs, squeaking their legs together, sounding like the chorus of crickets, and actually put their legs to use, hit the ground running or jumping for a fledgling cricket, and making your way to the wrong and make it right. I don't know what more to say, and I keep repeating it. I know maybe it doesn't excite people. I'm lazy too. I wish I could be more lazy. I listened to Grimner play music in the beginning, and I wish a long time ago I became a musician. I got a little bit of area I can go that direction. I got a beat in me a little bit, maybe not virtuoso, but I can play along really, really well. But I hear that music, the blues before, and I just say that's a whole other life. I really wonder sometimes wouldn't have been better to go there. But I wouldn't change anything right now. I wouldn't do it. It's just one of those things you're thinking about in your life. I'm asking you to step up, folks, as we need it. Don't worry about that you don't like it. Put that humility in your pocket. Put that ego in your pocket. And just focus on the task. Don't try to make a big deal about it, and learn it's a maneuver, learn it's a tactic, it's a strategy, it's up against, it's in a war, it's in a battlefield. And these battlefields come from any place. These battles will come from any place, but we figured out a strategy that if I know this is a fact, if you all aren't identified and you're all doing what you can do, but you all focus on one thing, you will terrify that thing and you will control it. There's absolutely no way for those people in that governmental position to stop you. One-on-one, a little bit easier. But you start applying yourself and finding others like you, you don't have to get real complicated about it. You don't form up into groups. You don't put yourself under a title. You just go after what you're going after. And you're going to be they want to be a terrorist? You want to be the real underwolf, like little underdog? You want to be the new underwolf that they're worried about? That's how you're going to do it. And we're doing that, folks. We're doing it as best we can. We're not so invisible. And you can't be invisible forever once you start doing things, but you can protect yourself. And you can be protected, and you can pull people around you to do so. So thank you very much today. I just noticed we're lining it out. Appreciate all you tuning in. UCY.TV. Appreciate it. All you guys in the chats. I apologize not being able to get in there. It's just not what I do. I go and I look later, though, to see, and FM broadcasters and anybody else tied in. All the other people tying in. I don't know how many of you are tying into our signal. I appreciate all that you do there. And do what you can, folks. Is really all that we can do for ourselves. And we're really looking for I don't have them, but I know that friends of mine have them. All the little ones that came into the world, totally oblivious to all this stuff, like we were. And it's up to us to make that decision. Do we want a better day for them, and then give them the opportunity? And do we build the tools in ourselves, the new principles that we've lost? Do we remember those and bring them to bear on the matter? That's for us to decide. That's a choice we have to make. And then upon what important thing, that's another choice. So thank you very much. Take care. We'll see you next weekend.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
Well, that's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.